Today, on Let's Explore This, we are going to discuss the lost village of Needmore. Yes, the lost village of Needmore, 'cause the old village old man McCann founded here on the banks of the Little Tennessee River has vanished, literally. Is there another region in the United States that has had more flourishing towns and villages disappear than the ones along the Little Tennessee and Tuckasegee Rivers in Swain and Macon counties? Almond, Japan, Judson, Bushnell, etc., in Swain County, went under when the Fontana Reservoir flooded the area in the 1940s. Yet there is another lost village farther south, up the Little Tennessee, near the Macon County line, that was sacrificed in the name of electric power. Strangely, it never went under water. It was left high and dry to wither and die. That place is called Needmore, and Needmore today is no more. Located several miles downstream from the ancient Cherokee settlements at Cowie, in present-day Macon County, the Needmore vicinity was first settled by non-Indians in the late 1820s. According to an article by Vinnie and Lambert Marr in The History of Swain County, the Brush Creek Baptist Church, the oldest church in the county, and the mother church of the Tennessee River Baptist Association, was organized in December of 1832. It was organized by members of the Deshartes, Tabor, Welch, and other families, as well as by Hannah, a black woman. I'm not crazy about going up this here road, but we have got to do it to talk about our next little portion of Needmore. So, the first church building, it was located downstream from Needmore on the east side of the river. In the early 1900s, the church was rebuilt, on a high ridge above the original site, 158 years after its founding. The question does remain, does this church see any activity these days? You saw that sign. You saw when it was organized. It does look nicely well kept, I must say. It does hold a nice metal roof, looking like a standing seam metal roof. It has a nice steep gable. It's almost 2 stories. I guess you could call it 2 stories. I do like the protrusion here. 4/4 sash windows. It looks like they run all around, even up there. Those windows there, though, they look smaller. Maybe so, 'cause these windows are bigger. And here we have, well, no, this one here is a 6/6 sash. This little window here, a little different window. Overall, this is called the Brush Creek Baptist Church, established 1832. It is the only building within the Needmore vicinity that, I must say, is probably well kept. From the looks of this building, yes, it does look like it has been well kept, has been repainted. It definitely does look old, but yet nicely preserved. In fact, almost too new, the way the siding looks. I don't think that's vinyl. No, I don't think so. Hey, can we get a peek inside? What's inside here? Inside this church today? Yeah, if you can, get a look through there? I know. The angle, the way these blinds are, this is the only way it can be done. I don't know if this will grab a good picture or not. It's hard to say. But yes, there definitely is stuff over there. This is definitely still in use, at least it looks like it is. There is this building back here, maybe an old schoolhouse? Sometimes you can peek through windows to see what the inside looks like. Here, though, they've got the blinds closed, so I don't think that's going to happen. Are these ones open just enough to see? Not really. Yeah, I mean, I can see. I can get a little peek. Like, I can see, like, the window over there and stuff. But I can't really see if there is anything in the building. Maybe classrooms or something. Things that might shed some light of what this was used for. A school or something. I doubt if it is still used as a school. If it was, though. But yeah, we're not going to be able to do any peeking here. Maybe up there, but I can't reach up there with my head. I seriously doubt if the door here is going to be open. Nope, locked. There was a time, a long time ago, when members living in communities on the far side of the river crossed over for services via a swinging bridge spanning the Little Tennessee. This current state-maintained 275-foot bridge was built in the 1950s, crossing from the west bank over the tip of an island in the center of the river to the east bank. Two previous ramshackled footbridges built by members of the community below the island were washed away in floods. And the old ford, it was further located in this area. Residents there, they used rowboats to ferry themselves and food back and forth. You know, Needmore, it was always a divided community in the sense that homes and places of business were located on both banks. So, folks, what do you say we take a little walk on the swinging bridge? That sounds like fun, don't you think? Of course, as we walk over the bridge, I am going to give you a little bit more history of Needmore. But today, if you ever do walk through the area, you may well be standing where once stood a general store. You could try to conjure up a picture of the vanished village, but you can't. Only someone who knew it in its heyday can do that. Somebody like Reverend Theron Slagle, who comes this way now and then as he rides his circuit. Now, he did so back in 1960, because the article this information is coming from dates to that year. Slagle died in 1990. Who knows if there is anyone today coming to this area that could tell you what went on here so many years ago. Slagle and his sons used to operate the rock quarry here. Now, where was or is that rock quarry? I could not tell you, but Slagle was a mountain-born man. He has been a Baptist preacher and a vocal teacher. He used to come from up the way a piece, just to cross the Swain county line in Macon. Yes, the county line. It is not all that far from this area. This was quite a place in its day, Slagle once recalled. Old man Allison McCann got it started. He settled in here 70 or 80 years, before 1960, that is. He owned a farm on the west side of the river. He owned a general store and a grist mill. After he came, the place, it seemed to sprout into a village almost overnight. There was no time until there were a dozen or more families clustered into a settlement along the river. Ruff Cunningham owned the east side of the river. He had a general store, too. That is where the post office was. The Reverend John Woodard's son, he was named John, too. So, is this information correct? Was this John Woodard a reverend? He had a son named Alec Woodard. In the Needmore area, there is also John Moses Woodard, who was clearly listed as a reverend. However, this Find-A-Grave site, it apparently does not list all the children. The Family Search website does appear to hold more. However, is this here all the children? There is no child with the name of John, so are there more? Or does the article hold a mistake? Not sure, but the Reverend John's son, John, is said to have owned another general store just south and up the river from the McCann store. The region hereabouts was quite thickly populated back then. There was a log cabin up every hollow. There were log cabin dwellers in those days. Slagle paused. Then he pointed out, across the river, past a field of tall corn. There, he said, that is where you can just barely see the top of that old house sticking up. That is where the post office was. The original building, it was torn down back about 4 years ago. Parts of the old building were used in building that structure. So, I am under the impression that the so-called top of that old house sticking up is no longer visible. What is called the McCann and later the Doyle Hampton place is believed to have disintegrated. A chimney, supposedly, is still visible, but in pieces. Ironically, the McCann house has come to be referred to as the Butch McCann house. I think it might be Birch McCann, whose name, reportedly, can still be found on some small bridges in Swain County. Now, folks, I am not going to go looking for that chimney. If I were to do that, I could end up walking for a number of hours and still not find it. This area is so large, so we're just gonna have to leave it at that. I will say this, though. There are some other strange places around here as well. In Needmore, this is what most of the scenery looks like. It's just plain wilderness, left for nature to take care of. But amongst that, there does appear to be at least one place that would make anyone wonder what on earth is going on. That particular tract of land is over here. It almost looks like it could have been farmland. Did it at one time have held crops? Like, at one time, it could have been farmed over. It does look like it has been planted with grass, possibly even mowed at times. The grass is not high nor thick. They do seem to go out of their way a little bit to keep this portion of Needmore nicely kept. I wonder why. Everything else around here is left for nature to do with as she pleases. This field here, though, it does look mighty similar to the one on this site. If it is, then it is the supposed site of the long-gone Freeman Mill. Now, the Nantahala Power and Light Company, they own all this today. Well, they were said to have owned it in 1960. They were said to have lent the old house out to renters from time to time, like they do the old McCann house. There are just the two buildings, and that was back in 1960. Slagle, he went on to say, "What I set out to tell you was how Needmore got its name. The name didn't come along until after Allison McCann came in here, and that was before the village had a post office. This was poor country back then. There were not any roads, just a dirt track along the river. It was way off from any place. The folks had a time scrabbling for a living. Folks here, they were always saying they needed more of this and needed more of that. Every time the mailboy came by, somebody would say, the folks need more of so-and-so, until finally, one day, he hauled off and said, you ought to call this Needmore. So, when it came time to suggest a name for the post office, that is what they gave it, Needmore. Slagle paused. He was silent for a moment. There was only the sound of the whispering river and of wild bird cries in that hot afternoon. The thing that made Needmore, he said, finally, was its situation on the river road. The village grew up as sort of a halfway mecca between the folks of Macon County and Almond down below Bryson City. So there you have it, the Needmore Suspension Bridge. Just as exciting as walking on the Brooklyn Bridge, don't you think? Yes, there are two cars here, not certain why. Some people must be on a hiking trip here in the Needmore vicinity. There is like a road that goes up there, though, like over there. We're not going up there. What we do have to do, however, because I am parked on the other side of the bridge, is get back across this bridge. Yet I still have some more about Needmore that does need to be discussed. So, what do you say? We take a walk back and discuss more of Needmore. First, though, we're going to wait for those people and their doggy to go. Furthermore, before we do move on ahead, there is one thing I do need to mention about walking along bridges like this. Because the river is moving, and it's moving rather swiftly. When you get into the middle, you kind of feel like you're moving too, even though the bridge, technically, it is staying still. It's kind of an illusion. You see the moving water, you're on a bridge that kind of has a bouncy effect, and you're kind of thinking, uh-oh. But, okay, so when the railroad came, the nearest shipping point for the folks of Lower Macon was Almond. Needmore then became a midway market center. The village drew trade out of Lower Macon from Tellico, Burningtown, and Oak Grove. This was the route of Macon. Folks came in on their ox wagons with produce and things to ship out on the railroad. Now, you must remember, there were undeveloped roads in those days. Many an old ox team crossed the river to the south to get on the east side, so they would miss the hills, and then cross over again further on. As time went on, Needmore grew. It got to be a village of over 200 persons. Traveling shows, yes, they made regular stops here. They pitched their tents over there on the east side of the river, off there beyond the island. As you can see, the island has all grown up in weeds, briars, and young growth now, but in the village's heyday, that was the recreational center. That was the ball field in the summertime. There was a ball game every Saturday, and teams, they came from all around. Needmore itself reportedly had quite a team. But why, up until 40 or 50 years ago, before 1960 that is, everybody came to Needmore. They came to trade and to have a good time. Then, about 1912, or maybe it was a little later, the Nantahala Power Company bought out the original owners. They bought all this river section for a right-of-way for a proposed power project. The original owners, they migrated and were replaced by renters. And since the renters were not interested in keeping things up, the houses and the store buildings and such all began to deteriorate. Slagle paused and shook his head. After that, the preacher said, Needmore began to die. But it took a long time to kill it, albeit one by one the families left their homes to the wind and the rain and moved away. Finally, eventually, no families were left in the village. And it stood here as a stark monument to its founder and its pioneer settlers. For a while, the homes, the stores, and the grist mill were intact. The oaks, the pines, the willows, and the cedars, they all stood watch over the deserted village. It was a ghastly sight, a bit depressing. A whole town, once the pride of these hills, was now without the sound of the human voice. And there you have it, the Needmore Suspension Bridge, up and back. Now, we still have more to discuss. However, before we get on with needing more to discuss, do you remember the road on the other side of the bridge? I kind of showed it to you. Well, if for some reason you don't remember it, that's it, over there. Do you know what road that might be? Well, you will find out in a little bit. The road I came on through here, however, is the dirt road, and it is right over here. You saw some of that already. It's called Lower Needmore Road, and it takes you through an area that today is nothing but wilderness. But at one time, as you probably now know, it did hold some population and activity. Well, those abandoned buildings, they crumbled into ruins. Then, those ruins, they disappeared. All that remained was the McCann house, just down the road from the heart of the village. The crumbling ruins of the old general store that housed the post office, those were cleared off and replaced by a livable structure that was taken over by a renter some time ago. Again, before 1960, that is. And again, back in 1960, folks are said to have still been working the quarry now and then, and it towered over the site of the village. And you know the stone that comes from it? Well, it has earned a wide reputation as pavings for patios, hearths, and chimneys. Because of that stone, the name of the village, yes, it did manage to own, for that stone is known far and wide as the Needmore Stone. And believe it or not, there is a very strange and quite mysterious building here in Needmore that exists not all that far from that swinging bridge. We have got to check that out. So, I guess the best way to get over there is to walk up here. But I'm kind of wondering already, what was this? Was this like a house? Maybe the old Needmore post office? Or maybe there are some artifacts inside that will shed some light on that mystery, although I doubt it. At one time, though, this had to have been something, no doubt. Yeah, it is kind of muddy here because of all the rain we've had. And wow, look at all the mud inside there. Well, I do not want to get my shoes all wet and muddy, but still, let's take a step in here and see. Wow, they had windows in here at one time. Yeah, there are no windows in here anymore, but at one time there was a window here. There was even a door here. You can see what the door was attached to. And there's like this fancy thing with a board across. Here, almost like somebody went out of their way a little bit to make sure that window did not get broken. Overall, this place has been left wide open for ages. It's like a little concrete cabin, and there's this hole down here. I wonder what went in there. Here we have, well, it's not a big cabin, I'm assuming, though, something was attached to here. I'm not certain. Maybe there was a shelf over here. I don't know if it would be a wall with a door. It could have been. Maybe it was a two-room. That would be kind of small, but I guess doable. I just don't know. Could this have been the Needmore post office? I doubt it. What I don't see are any artifacts that would shed much light on what this was used for. There was definitely something here. If you take a look down there, something did go in here. Like, you could see it, like it going across. Something maybe went out of that hole over here. What if we take a walk around this bizarre little building that looks like it shouldn't even be here, but it is? Ooh, this mud is a bit funky. But you know what? Let's go on top. It is a nice little concrete structure. And they've managed to put a little cornice on it. They've managed to give it a bit of style, though it appears a bit broken over there. Anyhow, let's take a walk up here and see what we can see via the roof. It's a nice rectangular plan of a building. It does look like it had a little chimney. Not sure. Is it safe to walk on the roof? It's a bit difficult to get over there. Yeah, I wonder. That hole. I wonder if that was for, like, a chimney. Could there have been a chimney here? I have to say, that's a very teensy-weensy, itsy-bitsy hole for Santa to fit through. I guess he would have to bring one of his elves to get through there. Wow, wait a minute. Look at this. I just noticed this over here. So, tell me, what was this? There's stuff buried in this mountain, like if some archaeologist did a dig or something, they'd find other buildings here, maybe? There's something down there, too. Let's check that out. it's a piece of concrete. I certainly don't think that's natural. I doubt nature would be making concrete with such a smooth surface. Wow, look over here. We've got brick. Was there something else here? Something that had bricks? What had brick around here? How did that even get here? I only see one. Or so, maybe it was dumped. Not sure. I don't see any more. And simply stated, I do not have all the time in the world to go scouting around for artifacts and remnants of the old buildings and the old civilization that was once Needmore. There you have it, though. This will lead anyone to ponder. What on earth was this? Could this building once have been associated somehow with the interestingly greenish pasture down there that I showed you earlier? It does make you wonder. Not only that, so there's the building. Here's the pathway that I'm using to go down. Now, take a look at this. I'm walking down here. It does look like there's a road here. I guess that means someone probably once drove their car over here. It's definitely wide enough for a vehicle. Yes, it is grown over with trees over there and stuff. You definitely couldn't drive a car here anymore. So, tell me, folks, how would you like to live way up there, on that mountainside there? Before we put Needmore to rest, there is yet another aspect of this area I would like to share with you. So, I have heard that there is a house somewhere up along Wiggins Creek Road that tends to harbor a bit of history. First, though, we need to see if we can find it. But I do sure hope we can find it, 'cause I love to immerse myself in old houses. Well, this old house, it is the Jeff Wickle place. Thomas Jefferson Wickle and Hazeltine Tiny Morgan had once lived here. Tiny had moved in town, maybe, to a nursing home, but she died in 1963. This place is really nice in comparison to others in the area at that time. It was built really well to have survived this long. There was a living room, a bedroom, the stairs, and the loft bedrooms. There was a kitchen and an L-shaped back porch that the kitchen door opened out onto. Then there is the long front porch. Moving back to the rear, or I guess the kitchen area, there appears to be no L-shaped porch. Maybe there was one here, but there appears to be none here today. Now, yes, the house is L-shaped, but I don't think they would call that a porch. And over the creek, behind the house, there is said to exist, or have existed, a 3-hole toilet. It was said to have 2 adult seats and a child's. So a local once said. There was, apparently, hinged lids on them. Now, I know many of you out there would love to see a toilet, especially one with 3 holes, but you know what? There is not enough time on this earth to go hunting through what might be a large, vast expanse of wilderness to find something that today may or may not exist. Furthermore, there was a road, probably the original, next to the bedroom end of the house. Across from it was a neat little workshop with anything and everything a farmer would need. A horse-drawn mowing machine and a rake were once parked there, or so it has been said. The kind you only see as rusty decorations in front of people's lovely brick houses these days. Now, again, I am going to talk about a couple of things that just do not appear to exist here anymore, like a bridge or two and a large flat rock. Do not ask me where this rock might be. There are quite a few of those around here. I just cannot be sure if any I see would be the one the article is talking about. I cannot be sure if the one the article is talking about is even still in this original area, or maybe it has been moved to some faraway place, I don't know. But a little further was a little branch that was spanned by a long flat rock. Where most people would have thrown down a log or two or just jumped across, Uncle Jeff had made something that would potentially last for eons. The reason for the bridge is because the spring and spring house were up against the mountain where the modern road is. The spring house was as neat and well constructed as the rest of the place, rock on the bottom where the water was, and wood above. There was another, smaller version of the rock bridge over the trickle of water that exited the spring, and good water it was. Travelers on the road above had a well-used trail over the road bank down to that little spring. There was always a dipper there. We did not know about germs back then, but fresh air and sunshine on both of us and our drinking utensils would have eliminated the threat anyway. Okay, folks, I hope you were paying attention. As I was showing you that little branch, there were at least two spots where you could say there was a flat rock laid across that spanned it, and you need to ask yourself this question. Are those artifacts or not? Now, a large part of what I said about the house comes from an entry that can be found in this blog, Reflections of Old Swain. Jeff Wickle was born in 1862 in Macon County, the son of Andrew Jesse Wickle and Sarah Ann Breedlove. Jesse Wickle enlisted in the Confederacy, the famed Thomas Legion, in 1862, and was never seen again. Jeff, his mother, his sister Arlacy, and brother Alan each went to their graves, never knowing what had happened to him. His fate was not known to the family until the late 1960s. At that time, it was discovered that he had been captured and transported to Fort Delaware, where he remained until his death in 1865, less than a month prior to the end of the war. Given the way this house looks from the outside, like it is collapsing over, we are not going to go up these stairs to go up to the second floor. That, folks, it is just not going to happen here. But in 1884, Jeff and Tiny married, when Tiny was but a young girl of 14 or 15. Their first child, Moses, named after Tiny's father, arrived the next year. They went on to raise a fine family of 10, 6 boys and 4 girls. Jeff, he was a well-respected leader in his community. In fact, he served on the death penalty jury for the Ross French trial. According to their biographer in the Swain County Heritage book, Jeff and Tiny lived in this home for nearly the entirety of their married lives, over 65 years. Wow, I have to say, a cute little design for ceiling paper. They have wallpaper, right? Well, I guess they also have ceiling paper. Cute little silverware and fruit and some religious signs. So, I do have to say, compared to the rest of this house, this grill here, it looks new. I wonder why it's in here. Somebody must have been in here grilling food. Although there is no propane tank or anything with it. How does it look on the inside? Not too shabby. Probably not too bad, though. It definitely does look polished, like almost new. Though, they say you must have been built really well to have survived this long. But damn, you're tilted to one side, disintegrating in spots. Your foundation has collapsed in areas. You need a major structural adjustment, yet you're so far out in the boondocks that you don't even get anyone to see you, other than possibly locals that live in the area. I don't think tourists travel back here too often. They wouldn't even know there is anything back here. Yet here you stand, a piece of history, like a museum in the middle of nowhere. Moving now to this here, a tool used by the State Historic Preservation Office. It lists all the historic resources in the state. So let's zoom in to the Needmore vicinity. Yes, a bit to the left there, now circled, is the Needmore Suspension Bridge. Now, we need to move south more to what is circled there, a resource simply titled House and Outbuildings. Yeah, that doesn't sound like much, but there might be more to this than meets the eye. So, this here is Brush Creek, which runs along much of Lower Needmore Road. Over here is a field, which is one of a number you will find along the road, many or even most of which may have been farmsteads at one time. Well, this one here, it is located at the far southern end of the road. However, the road does appear to extend further, but is blocked by this gate right here. Likely, what you see on this map is hidden up along this road. Unfortunately, I do not have the time to do much hiking on this episode. Therefore, I am not going to be hiking up that road. It would be cool, but let me show you a description of that house and outbuildings provided via this document, a reconnaissance survey of Graham and Swain counties done back in 1998. Yes, that is about 25 years prior to the filming of this episode. So, tell me, does that house and its outbuildings still stand? Not sure. Wish I had the time to venture up there to find out. Only have an hour to spare at this time, so no time for that. Still, let me point you to a blog, Reflections of Old Swain. In it, there is this entry from 2015, Old Needmore in the Fall. It talks a bit about the place once occupied by Birch McCann and later Doyle Hampton. And so does this entry from 2019, Spring at the Old Home Place, a photo essay. This photo here is from that 2019 entry, as is this photo here, both showing the same field. Yes, there are a number of these fields along the road. The ones those photos depict, however, seem different, wider, maybe even longer, than the two I documented. There are a couple of more that I did not track onto, so maybe those could have been it. There are, however, only 2 gated roads that I had come across. There's this one here, and there's this one as well, with this one requiring a trek across Brush Creek. Now, I did not venture up either of these, so maybe those fields are up these roads and not directly along Lower Needmore, not sure, but the chimney does reportedly still stand, or at least it did in the mid to late 2010s. I imagine it probably still does. Yes, as I stated earlier, I didn't go looking for it, but it likely does still stand alongside one of these fields. Furthermore, the remains of an old barn can also be found at this site. In order to locate the site, a gated road does appear to be important. This photo here, also from that Reflections of Old Swain blog, is listed as being of the road beyond the gate heading to the Birch McCann site. If that is true, which road is it? Is it up this one here? Or is it up this one here? Or is there another road I did not find that has or might have had a gate? Is the Birch McCann site the resource listed on this map of cultural resources as being that house and its outbuildings? Could what is described in this description via that reconnaissance survey, that which lies or once did lie up this road right here, I believe, be the Birch McCann house? You know, it is said that the McCann and Hampton house had remained standing until not many years ago. That is, not many years ago prior to 2015. This here, it is a photo of it. So tell me, is this the old Birch McCann place? Or some other long unoccupied rural house? Reportedly, this area, the so-called Needmore Tract, was purchased for conservation by the state of North Carolina in 2004. I wish I had more time to explore this area a bit more, but I must move on to this building right here, the Breedlove House. A one-story side-gabled house with 2 front entrance doors, a stone foundation, and a stone exterior and chimney. The house is believed to be of plank construction, which has been covered with asphalt siding. It sits close to the road and has a small storage building built into the bank behind the house. Let's go back to take a good hard look at this house. Does that look like asphalt siding to you? No, I didn't think so. It looks more like wood to me. Several other outbuildings, including a shelter for cooking sorghum, are located across the road. Today, this building belongs to the Breedlove family farms, who today focus mainly on goats, cattle, and poultry. It was, until 1994, a burly tobacco producer. The Breedlove name, by the way, has a long history in Swain County. Now, as far as Needmore goes today, folks do still live scattered about in the general area, at Hightower, at Rattlesnake, at Licklog, at Maple Springs, and at Brush Creek. The main village, however, the one old man McCann founded here on the banks of the Little Tennessee River, it has vanished, and the likes of the old man and the village will not come again. That, folks, that is the story of Needmore. Now, finally, we are able to move on to our next destination.